I think the next little segment that I want to get into is kind of like how you got started with it and how, the general public usually gets into it and what it entails.
Sure, and I'm kind of curious how you got into it too, so maybe I'll ask you that first.
Well, I just kind of always liked like all things radio and sound. My if anybody who's listening doesn't know, my major is music and technology, so I usually gravitate towards all things relating to sound and waveforms and technology revolving around any of that. And I actually didn't know too much about ham radio specifically before taking your class. So when I saw that as an elective class, I pretty much hopped right into it. And
Cool.
yeah, and I got my license from the class, and I'm hoping to get my follow-up licenses because I only did the first one, but yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I got started because my dad was a amateur radio enthusiast, and his brother, my uncle, were really big into it when they were growing up. So he passed that down to me at some point. I think he was just interested in me getting licensed when I was young, because the thing about amateur radio is there's no age limit to get licensed since it's a federal license. You just have to pass the test. And so, he kind of pushed me and my brother to study for it when we were like, I think I was 11 when I got the first license. But I just did it because I liked school. It was just another thing to study for.
Right.
And then I would solder radios in kits at home just to build them and see how that happened. And so I got more and more interested in electrical engineering as I got older and eventually majored in that.
I will say I agree with that part 100% because when I was in 4th grade, my family got me this like little radio kit, and it was very it was basically just a baseboard and like the circuits to like make the radio. And I didn't like gravitate directly to like the amateur radio stuff, but I stuck with all the electrical engineering and like that kind of stuff. So that component is also really cool because ham radio is something where you get an applied, a very cool applied practice for electrical engineering.
It's super neat to build something that came in a box that is pulling waves that are invisible from the ether, and then you can actually hear what's going on. I think that's just a really powerful moment. And a lot of my colleagues here who are professors in electrical engineering built an AM crystal radio receiver kit when they were young. It just seems like a lot of people did that.
Yeah.
And so it's a great way to get into that. Got me into all this stuff, right?
Right. Yeah.
I had a little AM radio kit, and then I'm like, oh, let's see how far I can transmit. I'm bringing a portable radio with me, running up the street, transmitting my own like low power music. And it wasn't amateur radio. This was like unlicensed. You could do really low power broadcasts like that, but it's the same principles. And so I really got into it in grad school because I needed a hobby.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'm licensed, so I may as well start using it and talking to people. And I met a lot of hams I was in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there are a lot of hams there because there's just Silicon Valley. There's a lot of engineers, and it was fun. And I got into sort of hiking with a radio. So you hike up to a mountaintop, and then you set up a portable station and you start talking with folks. And it's a way of practicing, like, oh, if I'm camping or I'm in the wilderness and I actually need to put an antenna up, what would I do?
Right.
Who would I be able to contact? And so it's a way of maybe practicing that, but also just it kind of maybe adds a goal to your hike. Or whatever. I'm going to get up this mountain, I'm going to get however many contacts. And it's just a lot of fun because there's a pretty small community that does that. So I was kind of active in that. It's called Summits on the Air. It's like a sub-hobby in amateur radio that I was into. And then I got into teaching it too, because there was a professor at Berkeley Mickey Lustig, who taught a similar seminar. So I just kind of brought the tradition here when I got started. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very glad to have access to a class like that, especially the way that you ran it, where we could get licensed by the end of it. And it wasn't just, oh, here, learn this and then go off and do it on your own. Because, like, even though I probably still would have eventually gotten the license, like, it wouldn't have been as soon as getting it with the class. which was really nice and definitely more motivating to like stay with it and stay involved in ham radio and just do more. So yeah, that's very cool.
That's great. I'm glad. I love that's exactly what the goal was.
Yeah. So what do you think is like the hardest thing about getting into it? Anything that's like prohibiting for the general person?
Well, I would say the licensing is not the hard part.
Definitely not. I was actually very
questions.
surprised about the test, like especially because everything's online. Like you can, for studying, like it's a pretty simple process.
Yeah, the exam is 35 multiple choice questions, at least the entry level license classes. It's 35, multiple choice questions, and all of the questions and all of the answers are public. Mm-hmm. Like you just study them. And there might be 500 questions on each exam that they could pull from randomly, but they're all out there. So you can study that, and you at least so you can do that and learn the answers for the test and you ace the test. Yeah. But then the hard part is applying, okay, so now what? Yeah. What do I do with this privilege I now have to use the spectrum? I don't know what to do with it. Mm. And I think one of the issues is there's just a lot you could do. Mm. Another issue I think is just figuring out what you're kind of interested in. Like why you got the license, right? And so I think it can be intimidating getting started. Like what equipment do you even need? So I think that's the hardest part. And really, the culture of amateur radio is built around this concept that they call Elmering. So your Elmer is like your mentor. And every ham who's been in it for a while said, oh, my Elmer was so-and-so. And like, there's a story about this mentor who sort of taught them the things that you actually need to become an operator. Yeah. So I think just joining a local club or going to a meeting, like here on campus, the Ham Radio Club is great. Mm-hmm. The folks are really friendly there and excited and enthusiastic. I think pairing up with somebody who'll take you under their wing is the best way to do it. The equipment is not that expensive anymore. So like the entry level handheld radio you can get for about $30, mm-hmm. an FM radio. That used to be a lot higher, like a lot more expensive. Just technology's gotten better. And there's just all sorts of other stuff you can do now that isn't even about like talking on a handheld radio to folks. You can fly drones, for example, with higher power. So your disk signal can go farther, or you can just get into listening to satellites as they pass over, getting satellite imagery from the NOAA weather satellites and mm-hmm. stuff like that. So there's lots of things that you can do and play around with once you understand what radio's doing around you. Right.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing because it's so versatile. And I feel like there's so many little subgroups that you can find, because I think it's also a community thing. And it's very cool that you can find these subgroups of people that are into like the overall ham radio, but then these very specific niche little applications of it.
Totally. And there's a whole lot. I guess one thing I should mention is when you think of radio on your dial, it's just music or sound. Mm-hmm. But radio waves are how your phone uses to, stream a video to you, or your laptop communicates with your Wi-Fi router. That's all radio too. So it can be digital bits, mm-hmm. information, image, music, sound, all that stuff. So amateur radio also gets into that. You can build high-speed wireless networks type on some of the amateur radio bands, and so some folks get into that networking aspect of it too.
I know one of the things that I've yet to do is I really want to learn Morse code, and I really want to use ham radio to practice it, because I know there's one of the subgroups is like Morse code enthusiasts. So I really want to do that personally. But yeah, I've yet to master the Morse code before I hop on.
Yeah, I can offer some tips because I enjoy it very much. So one of the things I had a lot of trouble with getting started was I was very mic shy. Mm. So I would call on the radio and then somebody returns my call. Oh my goodness, what do I even say? And sometimes you get tired because the way radio works is you talk for a while and then you have to wait. Then the person talks to you next because you're sharing the frequency. You can't both talk at the same time. And so it's a different style of communication, and it can be kind of awkward to get used to.
Yeah.
So Morse code is kind of fun because you're sort of engaged in like figuring out, okay, I'm encoding the message, I'm transmitting it, and then you hear it come back, and it's just kind of neat. I mean, you're just kind of tapping out these messages.
It feels very
fun.
game-like. It's very
exactly
mesmerizing in a way. So